Welcome to the Building Web3 Podcast. Today, I'm my good friend William. He's the co-founder and CEO of K3 Labs. Before we get too deep into K3 Labs, give us a brief background into yourself and how you got into this crypto sphere.
Thanks, Jax. I've been in fintech for most of my career. I've did a good 15 some odd years in traditional fintech before moving over to Web3. And like many people, I think it's just a normal and natural place to go if you're in fintech. To be honest, there was a lot of things that were already built there. We'd already sold a couple companies. I did pretty well. I was enjoying my time, but there's only so much you can do in that space, and we had such a greenfield opportunity on the Web3 side. Everything had to get built, right? So it was really exciting to come over, and I've been here now for about 6+ years.
Well, at the very beginning of the podcast, pretty much this is the only time we have skeptics because they don't stick around like 30 minutes in. So for people that you said like, hey, there wasn't much built out, talk to them a little bit about like what are some of the exciting things that you were building in Web3? Because some people say like, blockchain is just a solution in search of a problem.
Well, that's exactly why we started K3, is because we feel that exact same skepticism toward a very large percentage of projects. And I don't want to sit here and bash. There is quite a bit of, I have nothing wrong with people experimenting and doing fun things. I think it's fun to play around, but there is a genuine lack of tool sets and people solving what we would consider to be real world problems. And that's exactly why we started K3 Labs. So if those people can hang on just a few more minutes, they might learn a little bit about how we do think that we're solving some real world problems.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of the real world problems, because I think most people will look at crypto and they'll think, okay, stable coins, maybe some areas of DeFi, now AI having crypto wallets. What do you think is like kind of the product market fit that will stick around? Maybe it's RWAs. And then let's talk about how like K3 kind of enables some of that.
So I'll start with how we enable it, and then I think that takes us into the other part of the story. So the second part of your question is, we are a drag and drop like user interface that makes it really easy to basically monitor any on-chain data, write data on-chain, create triggers for yourself, create alerts for yourself, do all of that, kind of basically automate the day-to-day portions of Web3 management so that dev teams or even individuals don't have to sit there and code everything from scratch. The reason why we think that's absolutely critical is that the use cases, as you know, are largely not like US-based use cases or even European use cases. The use cases for blockchain really always tend to be in countries that don't have as strong of infrastructure. And in that same regard, they don't have the time to build everything from scratch. They don't have 20 some odd teams with $100 million in investment so they can go in and build every single piece of code from the ground up. So it is precisely because there's so much to do in the RWA space. I think DeFi is clearly going to win in some capacity. It's already won, right? So it's just a question of how long it sticks around. There's all kinds of really interesting things. In Davos this week, I guess they were talking about specifically really working to move bonds and stocks on chain. Whether that happens or not is nothing I know much about. But all of this work is going to take tool sets, right? All of this work is going to if you're not making it easy to work with this data, people will not work with this data. It's really as simple as that.
But first, let's talk about our amazing sponsor, HiMapper, who helps make this show possible. They're keeping maps up to date in a really clever way. All you need to do is drive your normal routes with their smart dash cam installed. No extra routes, no extra hassle, just drive like you always do and get rewarded. Join HiMapper and keep the map fresh for everyone. So let's talk about this like drag and drop interface. I think something that listeners might be familiar with is maybe like a make.com or a Zapier. Would you guys say you're like a Zapier version in Web3 where people kind of have these interconnected bits that they can piece together?
One of my investors has called us that. Yes. And I think that's reasonable. I don't know. I certainly with where they started, making it as easy as possible to automate processes is what we're doing, and doing so, you don't even you can build a workflow in our product without actually ever touching Web3. It just happens to be that there's no other tool out there that lets you to do all of those types of tasks, but work with blockchains as part of that process. So I think that's right. I think it's the right way to think about it.
So let's talk about some of the like common use cases, because we have a good amount of people here that are founders and builders, but some people that, maybe they're just trading tokens, or maybe they're just interested in the tech from like a high level view. Like, talk to them a little bit about like some of the use cases and functionalities you see getting pieced together on your platform.
One of the best calls I had was just this a few hours ago, to be perfectly frank. It was a relatively large company, will remain nameless, but they're a big Web2 company, telco. They've been, running hardware for forever, but they don't necessarily know the ins and outs of every single thing you have to do in Web3. And so for them, it's just a simple, hey, I want to get a balance of I've got 50 wallets across my ecosystem. I just want to get a single report sent to my email every night that calculates all of the balances across all 50 wallets and gives me a single answer as to what our positions are at any given time, without having to actually hire someone to go do that, or build some little in-house tool to do that, or, God forbid, bring in a super accountant that does that, just every quarter or something of that nature. Also, they needed a workflow process there to just top their wallets up, right? So again, if you have 50 wallets, you can build a little, maybe you can write some code and give yourself a warning if a wallet gets low, but then someone has to go in there and they got to get the keys and they got to get it all set up and then they got to top those wallets up. There's a lot of things, a lot of complexity that we bring into this world, in the Web3 world, that actually should be pretty straightforward. So that's an example of something you can build a workflow for. In our tool, put every wallet data in there. You can get that report that sends to you as frequently as you want that report to be sent to you. You can monitor all those wallets. If those wallets drop below certain levels in certain positions, you can connect in your operations wallet and have those wallets get topped up automatically. You don't have to think about all those things, right? All those things can just happen so that you can focus instead on on working on more important tasks, to be perfectly honest. Those are a couple of examples. Other examples are just pushing data to a chain that maybe you don't have a lot of familiarity with, right? So let's say you tend to work on a chain like Polygon, but you've got a lot of demand for people. They want you to start writing data over to some insert new name of chain X. In a traditional, like, if you're a dev team, you have to get that staffed up. You have to figure out how you want to do that. You could use a bridge if it's a financial asset, and that makes perfect sense. You can pay a percentage of the financial asset, and I still would recommend that if you're doing that. But a lot of people they're not actually talking about moving money across chains. They just want to write data across chains, just really basic things. And they need to be able to do that really in an easy and inexpensive way. So I've got another client that literally likes to work on a Polygon. That's where they built it out. They have people who want to read and have triggers on another blockchain. So they just monitor the Polygon contract, and every single time something gets written in the Polygon contract, they take a copy of it and they write it over to the other chain. And they don't have to monitor. They don't have to write new code. They can get that set up with us. Those are just a couple examples. I'm sure as we talk more, we'll run into some more things.
Yeah, I can definitely think of one. Like, let's say a founder starting a new business, and let's say they largely get paid in crypto, and their contractors are all going to be paid in crypto as well. So they're receiving payment. So it's like, hey, they might have a wallet, then they need to federate money out to different wallets and then make sure things are timed to go out to their contractors. I have yet to find, and maybe I'll have to be a user relatively soon, is like I go in there and I send the transactions to my contractors. So maybe I'll have to be creating a workflow to automatically just send out transactions to all my contractors.
Yeah, you can get that scheduled. You can also, similarly to that, yes, you can absolutely do that. But similar to that, you can also listen to a contract for a particular drop, right? So if you're expecting money to be coming into a particular smart contract, and then you want to conduct certain actions based on that event, maybe you simply just want to immediately move those over to USDC or something. So if you've got, you're expecting a drop from one of your clients, one of your prospects, vendors, whatever else, and you want to immediately convert that, you can basically listen directly into that wallet, or listen onto that contract for a big event, and then do that swap automatically, or even just have it send you something into your Slack channel, right? Like you don't even need, if you don't trust it to trade for you, that's fine, but have it just send you a Slack message and say, hey, this thing just happened. I know that sounds really silly. You think that infrastructure would already be obviously in place given how long we've been building in Web3, but it's not. There is not an easy way to send yourself an alert if something happens in your wallet. Like, it's just, or on a smart contract you care about, particularly on a smart contract on some chain that you might not really know very well, right? You've never worked with blockchain X. There's something going on there. Build a trigger that quickly just sends you an alert. You can do it in less than a minute, and so the triggers are thing. Auto trading is is becoming more and more popular. To be perfectly honest, people are realizing that this is safe and that they can use it. But we're getting some creative solutions. Every day we run into somebody who's got some cool idea that we probably ourselves couldn't even think of. So it's fun to learn.
And I assume like because of the we could say like the regulatory landscape is shifting in the U.S. and I've even seen heard like Chamath on All In podcast talking all about like big business stablecoin usage. So it's not just like the crypto natives, it's not just the weirdos like myself that are using crypto these days. It seems like your guys are getting more adoption in the crypto industry in general from we'll call it like Main Street.
Yeah, I that's another reason. So one of the other reasons why we started K3 was not just because we wanted to do something that actually had real value and build a product that kind of stood alone and said, look, this is, if we're really going to do everything we wanted to do with Web3, we kind of have to have the same tool set that we have in Web2, right? You have to have automation tools, you have to have better interfaces, you have to have that kind of stuff. So those things don't exist. First of all, let's build them. Secondly, most of my journey in blockchain in the last 6 years has been in the enterprise blockchain, partly because I'm a little bit older than your average crypto participant, just because I know that industry. I've been in fintech, I know the banks, I live in New York City, I spent a lot of time in London as well, so I just happen to know that group. So I was been working with them with various projects over the last 4 years before I started this company, and I knew what they can and couldn't do, and I knew what challenges they had. I knew what kind of wallets they couldn't work with. I knew what kind of protocols that they would reasonably work with. And so we set this up specifically and used some of them. Actually, some banks here in New York were design partners. They actually sat down with me. They talked about what problems that they have, and we built the tool out in a way that we know they're using it. They're trialing it, still POCing now. We've got one that's live, so we're absolutely working directly with that crowd to make sure that we're doing this in a way that makes sense for the challenges they have. And again, we're not necessarily talking about building automations for that are going to hit your payroll. I mean, there's all kinds of just day-to-day work that has to get done that if you have to build it from scratch, it takes you weeks and weeks and weeks. Every single project would have to set up and start up and set up their own reporting system, set up their own alerting system, set up their own monitoring systems. Every time there's a new chain, they'd have to set up a new infra. Like, it's just silly how much everyone has to rebuild everything from scratch, instead of being able to just build it as a workflow and an automation tool like K3.
Yeah, and for people that maybe aren't builders, like obviously you guys have seen you've had to switch chains and the annoyances of that. It's like having to go from Google to Facebook and be like, oh, so now you need to change the network and like just manually do these drop downs. So like if you have to do some new kind of integration, it's not only all the development work you'd have to pay for, it's the contract audits. There's so much that goes into it. Talk to a little bit like maybe somebody that's unfamiliar with all of the development resourcing that would go into just building, a normal run of the mill, blockchain integration without something like K3.
Well, I'll just talk a little bit to, again, maybe the trad tech, right? So I appreciate the crypto industry is different, and there's a lot of amazing things, building some things, and they've got teams that are working, lower cost teams or whatever it may be. But in a trad tech team, if you want to spin up 3 or 4 people and you want to focus them on this project for a year to try to create a POC or something like this, because you think, oh, this is really cool. By the time you factor in the healthcare costs and all the bonuses and everything and the structure and the team and the infrastructure, you're talking $1 million plus just to kick off a POC off the ground. Before you've even got started, before you even on day, actually even that's your like base cost to spin up a team and try to make something happen. Obviously, you can be lower cost if you're a crypto startup and maybe you get a grant or something, but that is what people are up against. And so people wonder, well, why aren't more and more and more trad techs coming in and trying to build cool things? It's not cheap. It's not cheap. It's hard. There's specialties in a lot of these. Some of these chains have their own programming languages, literally their own programming languages. Maybe they're close to Solidity, which is kind of the most common language. But again, Solidity is not a common language for trad tech users, right, either. So you have to be pretty technical. You have to kind of have a kind of specific expertise. On day one, you may not have to start generating wallets and worrying about assets, and that's scary for companies too. None of that is required with us, right? So you can literally build up a quick prototype, put a workflow together. You don't even have to have a wallet. You don't have to do any of that. You can just design it with us. You don't need us involved. You can just go to the tool yourself and get it started. So the costs are really, really, really high. The barrier to entry is just not nearly as low as it needs to be, and that's a real world problem.
Yeah, and I would group this all in the kind of like no code movement. It's actually funny. And when did I go to get my CS degree? So in 2016, I was like, I don't even know if I should go get a programming degree, because I'm like, I hear about like all these new no code tools. So what's the state of no code these days? Has it hit an inflection point where you feel like, most people, like, if they just want to fulfill maybe basic use cases, like, hey, we get payment to the wallet, we send a message to the Slack channel, we can do that with no code tooling. Like, what's the current state?
If you had asked me like 9 months ago who I thought our users were going to be, I was thinking there's a huge cast of people out there that are less technical, that don't know the ins and outs of it, and that we were going to serve that market. We were going to open ourselves up to brand new market that way. And what I have found out based on talking to all of our earlier things, it's hardcore coders are like the first people to jump in and say, I want this. So it's not about trying to necessarily remove it. They want to be able to do things quickly, right? They're sick and tired of every single time they get to a new job, they have to build the first 3 months of work is the same 3 month slog every single place they go. Like, it shouldn't have to be that way. You should be able to get certain things off the shelf. Just like when you start a new company, you're like, okay, well, I need a GCP or an AWS instance, right? For my this, I need a storage solution. I need this. Maybe I need Versal for hosting or whatever. You just have your kind of things that you need to get started. Then you start building. Our hope is that K3 is just one of those tools. You just one of those off-the-shelf tools that you need to get started. You can automate all your stuff, get it done quickly, and then you can really focus on building your value add, your actually unique proposition, right? Because that's what's going to set you apart. Worrying about how to structure a wallet top up, or worrying how to structure like a wallet report, or like, none of that is going to separate your project. That's not what's going to make you great, right? It's just basic maintenance stuff. And in traditional world, if you're like just a traditional developer, you haven't had to worry about those things for 20 years. Those things are just off the shelf tools that everyone has available to you. Google Analytics is off the shelf. AWS has their version of that off the shelf. All that stuff is just off the shelf, right? And we have none of that off the shelf in our world. And of course, it's harder for us to attract talent if that's our situation.
Absolutely. It's yeah, blockchain is hard, and that's why our friends at like Enzo and certain companies have made transaction abstraction a lot easier. Other people have done like wallet abstraction, so we're definitely applaud you for making it a lot easier. So you mentioned that the core audience is largely like these hardcore builders that are like, I want to just get something off the ground. Are you then seeing them come in and remake those workflows in code, or are you seeing them kind of like use this symbiotically with other pieces of their infra?
From what we can tell, they continue to run these things. They're not turning them off. So they're uh, again, do the stuff that's automatable in an automation, and then spend your time building the stuff that makes you special. You've got a special algo that rebalances in a special way with a great prop trading desk. We've been working with some prop trading desks. They need on-chain signal data in order for them to build their prop models. Should they build a huge piece of infrastructure to pull up all those on-chain signals? Or should they just focus on building their prop model, right? So right now with us, they're able to build their prop model, the thing that differentiates them, the thing that makes them the fastest, coolest trading algo out there. And they're just getting all of their on-chain signals from us. So that's just one example, but why build that from scratch? Like, why would you need to build that from scratch if that's not what's going to separate you from? And plus, you might mess up. You're taking on a maintenance burden. What if your server goes down or something? So there's just a lot of reasons why you would prefer to automate your basic tasks like that. And from what we can tell, they automate them, they get them up and running, and they let them keep running. They build new ones. So as far as we can tell, people aren't deprecating the work that they set up with us.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because I was thinking of like, I know a lot of people that have built, well, I use Zapier every single day, and I used to be an engineer at Google and BlackRock. So like I can attest to very technical people are like, well, whatever gets me there faster, I will use quickly. I'm quite curious because like we've got the technical use cases. I'm very interested in kind of the institutional adoption of things like this. So are you seeing like obviously you don't have to name any names, but you mentioned like telcos are using wallets. I think it comes as a bit of a surprise at times that Main Street is actually adopting some of these like crypto workflows. What are you seeing people do? Is it they're doing international stable coins because it's a little bit easier? Like, what are people doing in crypto from an institutional perspective?
So there's a lot of telcos that have gotten the go ahead to basically run crypto infrastructure, right? So they're sitting on these massive data centers, cable companies for that matter as well. Anybody who's in the old communications area, their hardware, their data centers are getting less and less important to do the work that they were doing 30 years ago. And now they have the capacity to, so a lot of them are getting permissions from their boards, from their, CEOs, from their compliance departments to start, not necessarily mining Bitcoin, because that's a very specific activity, but confirming transactions on Ethereum is becoming a very popular thing. Confirming transactions on other L1s is becoming a very popular thing. So there's a real revenue system there for some of the hardcore telcos. We see quite a few of those, and those are people again who would use us monitoring, topping up those wallets, getting reporting off of all that infrastructure. There's quite a few people that need to write data to chain, right? Because either they've been using private blockchains this whole time to do supply chain analytics or to supply chain communications. Actually, I think Walmart is one of the largest, if you really look at the amount of data that they've pushed to their private blockchain over the years with their supply chain stuff. And this is not a tech that is new to that industry. To be perfectly clear, they've been doing this for 20 something years. They just haven't done it in a public way. What we're doing is working with public chains. But that's a good example too. Our system can absolutely work with a private chain as long as we're a permission participant. So the point is that if you are in your little private ecosystem, but you need to interact with data that's public, or you need to push data out that's public, you frequently aren't going to have the ability maybe to work with some random chain and some random coin. No worries. You send the request into K3 Labs, and our node operators will actually write that out to a public chain for you, or create the connection between your internal system and the external system. So other use cases: publishing carbon data, publishing net asset value data, NAV data for the big financial. They're sending all this data. It's basically public data. They send it every night through spreadsheets. There's no reason why they shouldn't be putting that on a blockchain instead. Eventually then people can build triggers off that data. So we see people experimenting with that. We see, say, pushing data to private chains. That's actually really common, but then wanting to interact private and public, which is what makes it a lot easier with us. And then, people are playing with loyalty programs. People are playing with NFTs, specifically around, I guess you can say, all the watch brands in Zurich or something, right? And Geneva are playing with making sure that there's a digital representation of all these luxury goods. They're doing very basic things like this. And again, the thesis is if it were easier to do more, they would do more, but they're still kind of playing around, and we make that iteration process as simple as humanly possible.
Yeah, one thing people sometimes don't realize is like the more seamless and very easy a front end is, usually it's hiding like a bunch of complexity on the background. So like you have all of these integrations with smart contracts, with different chains. How do you guys do that? Is it, a new chain? Like let's say Aptos comes tomorrow and it's like, hey, I want to be connected with K3. Is it they come and build the integration for you guys? Because that's sometimes Zapier will have the like incoming chain essentially write it. Or do you guys write every single integration yourself?
So I'll just smoke and mirrors, and it all just happens magically. What do I know? I just show up in the morning and it's all done. It's fantastic. So look, when we're big enough to be Zapier, I think we would be big enough to have people say, look, we're going to come in and write these integrations. And that'll be a great day. That'll be a fun day. We'll come back on the podcast and talk some more about how great our journey was. The reality is that, we are hand-holding a lot of our partners in the early stages, and it's actually better for both sides. We learn a little bit more about what they really want to do, because we don't have everything built out 100%. I mean, it's pretty darn good, but it's not 100%. So it's great to learn more clearly what it is that they need to make sure the tool is going to work for them, and help them get up and running, and help that integration occur. They bring people to the table. We bring people to the table. It's not, the good news is that most of this it's just not there are people in blockchain who want this to be hard because they actually like that separation between us and the rest of the world, to be perfectly frank. It's actually not that hard. I mean, it actually isn't quite that hard. Yes, keys are hard, but that's getting easier. There's better the abstraction tools in and around that. But it's really not that hard to compose a blockchain message and know how to set it into a node operator so that node operator can actually, push it to a blockchain. It's hard to get the signature. That's, as I mentioned, the keys can be hard. But other than that the rest of it is really just moving data around, and it's not that hard for us to add integrations. It's really not that difficult.
Yeah, it's very exciting, and the easier it gets to build on chain, the better it is for everyone, including myself. So one question we always like to ask all the guests is like, do you feel like there's an area of the blockchain ecosystem that is underdeveloped or under resourced that you're like, ooh, that is a great business idea? Because we have a lot of builders and people hoping to be founders one day. Is there any area, because you touch so many areas, that you feel like, I'm really surprised people aren't building more here?
Yeah, I'm surprised people aren't doing more with social media and user created content, just because that's where the whole world is going. I mean, we're on a podcast right now. I'm guessing that the format of this is largely going to be out in podcast form and all the usual places, yada yada, and there might be a visual version of it on all the usual places, yada yada yada. Well, none of that's been decentralized. None of any of that. We're all, we were all on X, where a lot of people are still on X, and now there's a big move over to Blue Sky, whatever. None of that's been decentralized. None of creator content is all on Twitch. Why is that all on Twitch? I mean, what's so special about, because they have a better program to incentivize people? That could all be done right with crypto. I mean, in a way that might even be more exciting and more interesting, with a better market structure, so that people are voting with their feet more. I know there's just the whole point of what we're trying to do is incentivize certain behaviors. And if there's anything, social media is kind of the perfect place, and social content and social creation of consumption of content, all of those things. I'm surprised there's not more plays there, and there might be. It's just that they don't get off the ground, because the reality is that all the oxygen is sucked out of the big players. That's where all the creators are now, and so it's really, really hard to move people over. But I'm telling you, you got creators involved in a new platform where they got early entrants, like popular creators, and they could be early entrants in a new ecosystem, and they could. I mean, it reminds me of Joe Rogan being one of the first people to move over to wherever I can't remember. I don't know which of the things. Yeah, like. If you could be early in on a place, and you can do really, really, really well. There's more. I think there's more area there to work with.
Yeah, for people that aren't familiar, because I've ripped a lot of views, because I was an influencer in the Latin American market. I probably had about 70 million views, and I made probably less than $1,000 if you just count like ad revenue, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, that's crazy. I will never get more than 7 views, and I'll get about the same amount of money, just because I pay myself for my time.
Well,
yeah,
this is a little hot tip for creators. Is it 100% matters who you're talking to? If you're just making somebody laugh, it's not that valuable. If you're talking to them about like chain abstraction, you can make a lot of money off 7 views.
Yeah, no, it's that's a perfect case. I know people who are killing it. You think they're killing it, right? You've got this podcast, you got these followers. And then you really break into the numbers, and you're just like, wow, they are barely making rent. It's crazy. And so there's definitely an opportunity to fix that somehow. And particularly if you're getting involved, in a currency around both the creators and the participants can enjoy. And I don't know, there's something to be done. That's not my role, but I would love to partner with whoever wants to build that, whoever's listening to the show. Please give us. You can either contact me directly, DM me directly, or start using the platform. It's open, it's free. You can get on it right away, and start building it. And if you get stuck, let us know, and we'll fix it.
Absolutely. Well, everyone reach out too. So finally, where can people learn more about K3 and connect with you online?
So we are K3 Labs with a hyphen, so k3-labs.com, and the app is app.k3-labs.com, but you can get to the app from our main website. We're on X at K3_labs. Like, in hindsight, maybe choosing 2 words was problematic. Maybe we should put it all together. You can grab us there. Personally, I'm at FinTech William, although I don't respond to my DMs as much as our team responds to you hitting us up at the company website. So, or on the contact us through the company website, or contact us on X at K3_labs. But if you click around just a few minutes, you should be able to find us. And there's also a feedback form in the app itself. There's the opportunity to chat with someone on our team in the app in the app itself. So if you get started with the app and you get stuck right away, it shouldn't be hard for you to find help. And if you do, but then shame on us, because that's what we are there to try and help.
Awesome. I'll put all the links down in the description. Let's continue building the future of on-chain.